Hello everyone. So I'm back again. Today's demo is going to be ModSecurity, and if you're not aware of it, it is actually an open source web application firewall or WAF. Uh, you can download the source code and actually try to use it. Uh, so the most realistic approach, if you want to test, if you want to learn how to do bug bounty, you need to learn how to actually do a lot of tests in front of a firewall, because a lot of the applications, especially if it's enterprise level commercial applications, they're gonna have one form or the other, uh, a web application firewall running in front of it. So you would need to learn your lab or your tests or your practice labs should imitate as much as possible a realistic setup where you would have some kind of firewall, web application firewall in front of the application. Because here's the thing. If I were to, let's say, I do have the application I've been working on for the past, I was saying like a month or two, which is a PinewoodStore vulnerable app. If somebody were to practice on that, and they could learn a whole lot of stuff. Don't get me wrong, but it wouldn't be as close as possible to the realistic approach. Because let's say if they want to test uh, Boolean-based blind SQLi, in that case, they would need to run some kind of SQL query or add a Boolean-based SQL statement to test if the backend has a SQLi injection vulnerability, or even have a SQL vulnerability, SQL database at all. So what they need to do is actually, because if you run those tests, what ends up happening? And let's say you go to whichever company. I'm just using randomly a company. Maybe you're testing, let's say, Walmart's e-commerce site, and you want to test that. If you want to test to see if it has some kind of vulnerability, most of the time, most of the tests that you do is the web application firewall will catch it. So you need to learn how to test in front of a web application firewall. If you don't, it's just not going to be very realistic. You'll get to a work, or I mean, you'll be approached by a company to do some kind of pen testing, black box pen testing, and you just be stuck because all you've done so far is just, you know, white box where you're actually inside, have some kind of information. And if you're not able to test and get behind, bypass a web application firewall and try to test something, then you're not going to learn anything. You're not going to find, uh, you're not going to be as realistic. You're not using a realistic approach. So with that being said, what I did is I took the mod security and I modified it. I actually created a dashboard using a Python script. What it does is it would parse the ModSecurity audit file that is actually inside the folders. I actually created it in Docker, so it is called modsec_audit.log. This is created by the WAF, the ModSecurity WAF. It would generate this each time a traffic is passed through, and uh, maybe it kind of like it triggers some kind of rule set up by mod security. It would be added to this. So what the dashboard does is a Python script. It parses that file and gives you a dashboard and kind of complete view of what it looks like. Because most of the labs that I see on YouTube, don't get me wrong, a lot of people explain everything clearly how to set it up, but it doesn't seem like maybe somebody want to just set it up and start using it, right? They don't want to be kind of like running some kind of command, tell command to see, oh, okay, I just saw it 403, or maybe going through a row uh, log file, right? This is not very realistic. It needs to have some kind of dashboard. So I created a dashboard and I'm gonna go ahead and demo it right now. So the first thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna start clean. So I'm gonna go back to my uh, Docker application, the public Docker application, which is PinewoodStore Docker. I'm gonna go ahead and clone the repo and start the application. Then we're gonna go back to the ModSecurity dashboard and clone that as well and start running it. And we're gonna go ahead and do uh, a test run. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and uh, scan through the WAF. It's already set up. Everything's set up. What you need to do once you actually do build up the Docker environment, you can start testing using burp. You can start scanning it. You would see the traffic hitting, and you would notice that most of the payloads that we used so far are going to be blocked. So it's good to know there's actually, also an advanced understand how the WAF rule works. That way, even if you say a WAF rule is not configured for a company, you can actually, give your expert opinion based on what you practice so far. Because in general, all WAFs, kind of like the concept is the same. There's going to be a rule, whatever language it is written in, there's going to be a rule. And when that rule, and when some traffic actually fulfills that rule, is going to be filtered out. So you're going to get some kind of a message on the dashboard. It's going to have every WAF is going to have some kind of dashboard. It's going to show you, okay, this is blocked because request has a SQL injection. It's trying to exploit that or something like that. But I feel like for open source, this dashboard that I created, it could give you a lot of information out of the box. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start with the application first. I'm going to go ahead and clone it. And let's go ahead and create our folder somewhere in here. I'd like to start clean, reclone the application. All right, so while this is copying, I'm gonna go back. And I'm also gonna go to I haven't made it public yet. I'll probably make it public today, and if anybody feels like they want to use it, they can start using it. But I feel like it's ready, and it could be very useful. So I'm gonna go ahead and clone it. Let's go back here again, and clone this one. Same folder that way. All right, so we have both right now. Let's start. I'm gonna go ahead and I always start with the application. So as a matter of fact, I already have it open, right? CD. Right now, if I were to show you, is actually empty. Just to show you my Docker environment, Docker desktop. Up, dash. Yep. All right, let this one start, and it should be up and running. You can check it. I believe it should be up and running now. All right, so let's see a little bit of CPU action here. So yeah, okay, now it should work. All right, so it's up. The next thing is gonna be, we'll go ahead. Let's do the ModSecurity. All right, the dashboard and the WAF is already set up. All right, let's go ahead. So just to go over and explain some things, let's say if you don't want to use you have your own web application, but you don't want to use PinewoodStore Docker, you can still modify uh, this Docker deployment that I set up and have the dashboard work for you. So if I go back to here, ModSecurity dashboard. So if you go to Apache ModSec, and you'd see there's actually Apache config, and you'll see everything. So if you open this up, this is where the redirect is set up, right? This ModSecurity right now is going to operate as a reverse proxy. So what it does is, in this case, it actually, I'm deploying it to the same machine, so it would be a lot simpler deployment, I would say, because it's actually on the same system, different container obviously, but the IP address is the same. Only the port number is different. In my case, the WAF, ModSecurity WAF, is running on port 8880, and my application is running on port 8088, which I demonstrated already. I don't know if you noticed just a minute ago when I clicked on it, it did open up. And I'm going to go ahead and open it again. As you can see, the port number is 8088. But I want my traffic to go to my ModSecurity WAF, which is here. And the port number, as you can see here, is 8880. Now this is the dashboard. The dashboard is going to have a different port, which is port 8000. It's actually up. I can go ahead and open it. But since the auto file is empty, it's not going to have anything. It's just probably going to have some sample. But this is what it looks like. This is actually, it's reading a previous scan that I did. You can ignore it. And I also want to show you something. This dashboard does have a feature. Let me go ahead and, this dashboard does have a feature to export your report to either CSV format or PDF. Let me go ahead and demonstrate it. That's a good thing. I have this data right now. The other thing is, this is just showing you the normal traffic. And if we click on it, and this is just what the scan, I was doing a burp scan. Burp is running this, basically a command, but since the rule is not seeing it as malicious enough, it would, some of these things would actually pass the firewall, right? I can make it more stricter by adding more rules, but what I did for this test is blocks the most common ones, like cross-site scripting, SQL injections. Those are blocked, or maybe directory traversal or something like that. This WAF would actually kind of block it. And as you can see here, this is the reason why this is normal traffic, is the status goes to 200. 401. 401 is not technically malicious. It basically means the user doesn't have the right, is not allowed to access this. Kind of, it could be permission. Sometimes, you click on an admin panel, you get like 401 or something like that. That doesn't technically mean it's just malicious. It just probably means it could be a regular user trying to access a functionality that the user role doesn't allow. So that kind of traffic it usually would bypass, but obviously you're going to get 401 since you don't have the permission. Yeah, if we go through it, it's probably mostly 401 and 200, or maybe redirect in some cases 300, something like that. But this is what it looks like. This is what, and like I said, it does give you an option to go back to the main dashboard. And on top, it does have a dashboard explanation, what that means, what the status code means, what is considered a normal traffic. This 401 404 normal traffic. A rule violation is obviously is going to have some kind of mod security rules that you can set it up yourself. Let's say if it generates 406 and you want to set that up as a rule violation, you can set that up and it will come up, and rule violation, you'll start seeing some counts. But what I focused on is the normal traffic and the attack attempts. The attack attempts obviously is 403. If I click on this, you'll see all of them are actually 403. These are definitely which the WAF kind of like determined based on its rule set. These are possible attacks, like trying to access the robots.txt. Actually, this is just something what the payload does when it comes to burp. It runs any kind of test, but I don't even have robots.txt on my server, honestly. But if we see a lot of things, most common ways to kind of like this, using this character on URL is going to see it as a way to do some kind of directory traversal. So it's going to actually block it as well based on the rules. And this is trying to see if there is a backup, right? Some kind of backup file on somewhere on directory where you would have images. So these are the most common attack vectors. So if we look at this, if we see this, this is obviously uh, it's using select statement. This is trying to do a SQL injection. So what we gone through on the previous videos where I actually showed how to exploit a SQL injection, whether it could be the classical SQL injection where you would bypass it using, some kind of OR statement and or AND statement, some kind of SQL injection. Also, it could be Boolean-based blind SQLi or SQL injection, or union-based. All of these are actually because the WAF is going to detect you're trying to use SQL queries in the URL. It's gonna block it. So basically, that's what it is. Now, with that being said, now let me go ahead and demonstrate. It does actually export to PDF as well. This is very nice dashboard, honestly. I'm proud of it. And let me go ahead and try to export this. You'll see in a minute it would pop up and I'll be able to open it up. So, but since the data is huge, most of the time you might see is doing this thing on top, as you can see here. But eventually it's gonna download the PDF. Let's give it a little bit more minute. Okay, it opened it. Okay, it opened it already. So total request, this is how it shows you. This is for the total request. And it shows you the path, it shows you the status code. So in PDF format. You can also export it in CSV format. Maybe you want to kind of work on it using Excel or something like that. But that being said, it does also give you another option, which is, let's say you feel like you want to do, want to start over, right? You have too much data, you don't need this anymore. You could reset what's on that file by just using this. You can reset it. You're just going to ask you want to reset it. You click OK, and it's gone now. Now you can go ahead and start a new scan, which is what we're going to do now. So I'm going to go back to my environments where I have Docker is open. It was open already a minute ago. All right, so everything is set up. So the next thing, let's go ahead and like we talked about, I think I mentioned this already. So even if you decide not to use my vulnerable app, you can set up your own vulnerable app. You just need to configure my app here. I'll probably include more information on the Docker or on the GitHub repo README page. I'll include more information on how you can modify this to use it for your own application. But let's go ahead and do a simple scan to see what it looks like. Now, I mentioned it earlier on. If we look in Docker, my application is running on port 8088. But what I'm going to do is I'm not going to scan through that because that's directly hitting the application, right? I'm going to scan through the WAF, which is a WAF is using, as you can see here, 8880. 8088 is actually the application. So you can see the distinguishing port numbers here. So I'm gonna go ahead and leave it open. So let's go ahead and set up a new scan. I'm gonna do a quick scan that way. Let's see IP address. I don't care reviewing my IP address because this is actually internal. So it's gonna be 8880 is where my WAF is. My application is on 8088. And I will also show you when it's scanning, it's actually generating those logs. 8880. So let's go ahead and start scanning. Fast scan because it's just a demo. All right, it's already started. And as you can see here, scrolling is already auditing. So now you would see some of this attacks would bypass through, like for instance, this DOM-based cross-site scripting. What that means, and you just need to adjust the rule set. This also teaches you how you configure web application firewall using a rule set. Now, obviously, if you're using commercial, it's gonna have a different rule set of how to adjust the WAF. But the concept is the same. How do you do it? What kind of language? It depends on the language, but how to set it up, you learn a whole lot about it, and also how to bypass it. If you can test it in here. And if I were to go in the logger, and if I actually show you the status code, and let me, as you can see, there's a lot of 403s because a lot of these are going to be blocked by the firewall. And let's go ahead and take a look at the logs of the firewall itself when it's actually the scan is running. So if you open up this, as you can see, it's showing you a lot of stuff. And you see a lot of 403s here is because the WAF was already set up to block some of the attempts to exploit maybe cross-site scripting, like I said, SQL injection already recognizes it, is blocking it. And 401 is because obviously the rule is trying to test something that requires authentication, and that's why I didn't provide any authentication. That's the reason why you would see a lot of 401s. If you want to do advanced scan, obviously you probably need to set up authentication. You can do it a lot of ways, but that's a different video. I actually have another video where it shows you how to set up auth scans for Burp Suite by capturing the authentication, but you can use that and also apply it here. But as you can see here is scanning, and also let's go back to our dashboard. Let's see what it looks like, right? It's empty right now. I can refresh it and it will start to update this information. As you can see here, is already updating. I don't, like I said, I don't have any rule set up for this 403, 414. But if I did, I'll probably start seeing some things on rule violations. Now there's 724 attempts to exploit a vulnerability, obviously, because it's a payload for SQL, most well-known payloads. Now, one thing I want to mention is if you go back here, the ModSecurity conf file, you would see these are some of the rule sets that are being used. You can also include more. This is more of the basic rule set, core rule set. But you can kind of read through ModSecurity and you can add more rule set and modify this. All you have to do is just include more rule sets and it starts applying it. You could read on that, but yeah. So that's what's going on, and it's scanning right now, and I can show you. It's actually, let me see. Let's refresh it again. I think it's probably done. Yeah, it's probably done. So let's go ahead. Yeah, as you can see, crawl and audit. It's a fast scan. It is done. And it gave you all of the reports that you need. You can export it, like I said, CSV, PDF, all reset report and scan again. If you want to see the separate requests separately. And also, just like you would see on a typical dashboards, you would see one of the most important things is the timestamp. If you're investigating some event, you want to see what time it happened. So it would actually, since the logs were generated, timestamp, you can see this. And actually what you see on the main dashboard is the most recent ones. The most recent ones will show up here, but if you want to see everything, obviously the normal traffic, which is 200 to 399 or 41 or 404, you see it here. The blocked ones, which is 403, you're going to see it. You just need to click on it. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and yeah, I'll make the repo public. I believe it's ready right now, honestly. It could be a lot useful for people who want to set this up and actually use it as a WAF. Because if you're testing something, you want to make sure your lab is set up to be as realistic as possible. Because if I were to test something, like if I go to a company, maybe I'm doing some kind of bug bounty program, the highly likely, especially if a bigger company, they're going to have some form of web application firewall. And if I were to find something significant, first off, what I need to learn is how do I bypass a web application firewall to even get the payload to the system or to the application, because this is the first thing that your traffic is going to hit, the application firewall. And if you're not able to find a way to bypass it or hide it, then you're not going to be able to find a lot of bug bounties programs. Because if you're an internal tester working for a company, obviously you're doing testing from the internal. You might even be able to test this without hitting the WAF from the internal network. And in that case, this is not something you need to worry about. But if you're doing bug bounty programs or you're doing some kind of pen testing where you need to do black box, meaning everything, you don't know anything what's going on, you just need to do your own research and find out what the vulnerabilities and all that stuff, then it would be best if you set up your lab environment as much as possible to replicate a realistic environment where there is some form of WAF, right? And if you use this, even if you use another application, damn vulnerable web application, you can set it up to that one again. Like you just need to modify that file that I've shown you earlier on, and you should be able to see this. And also you can add more rules, like I said, and that will be a best way. So that's all I have to share, and I'll make this repo public so anybody can actually take a benefit of this and use it. The good thing is it's set up on Docker, right? Let's say you don't even have to, you want to test it and just get rid of it. And also you can go back to it. I like that kind of environment. That's why I actually like Docker, right? I can set it up, and as soon as I'm done, I can just delete everything. If you feel like you want to, for safety reasons or anything, you can just, you can spin it and just, delete it. But